So I've been working through the shadow work journal, and I was noticing on TikTok that there's a lot of people that are very skeptical about the whole concept of shadow work. And I'm not sure if it's because the term shadow work sounds dark, but I know that there's a lot of Christians that are really boycotting shadow work. All shadow work is based on psychoanalytic theory, basically produced by Carl Jung, and it's about finding the things inside of yourself that aren't readily on the surface, but they're under the surface and they're causing you to make choices that are maybe not the best for you. So shadow work is not a scary thing. It's a necessary thing. It's where we deal with our issues. So in the shadow work journal, basically what the goal of it is to kind of find the roots of why you keep making similar mistakes, repeating old patterns, things in your unconscious that maybe you don't even realize. Sometimes I like to say that, sometimes we may start something to protect ourselves, or start something in order to self-preserve, but long after that thing's gone and done, we're still doing the thing to make ourselves feel safe, and instead of it being helpful, it actually is hurtful. And so on page 10 of this, and it's introducing the whole concept of shadow work, it says the shadow is an unconscious aspect of your personality that the ego does not identify with. And you may experience your shadow self when you are triggered in social interactions, relationships, and episodes of anxiety or sadness. So when you're having these negative emotions, Carl Jung, postulated that that is your shadow self trying to come out and trying to be known. And again, I know that the term shadow work probably for a lot of people feels dark, and like negative, but it really is just a term of saying it's the thing that's following you around that you don't even recognize that it's there, but it's causing you some problems. And so that's what they mean when they say shadow work. The goal is to make the shadow work conscious so that you may work on them, self-reflect, accept. And I love this. I absolutely love this book. I am a grad student studying clinical mental health and school counseling. I'm actually taking a break right now for my own mental health. But this is such great therapy that you can do on your own at home, to really maybe work through some things, or maybe to work through this and then share it with your therapist. I do understand that it's incredibly ableist to believe that everyone can afford therapy, but this journal was like $20, and it's really, really good. The shadow is composed of the parts of yourself that you have forgotten, abandoned, or repressed in order to grow and to fit into the mold of society. So it's kind of like when you start out as a little kid, and you have all of these things that are truly you, because you don't have all of the garbage and the stuff that you've had to climb through in order to survive. So as a little kid, all of those things that are there inside of you, as you start to grow, you start to feel, well, maybe this isn't acceptable, or maybe you are punished or bullied or abused in such a way that leaves you feeling scarred. So all of a sudden, that original, like, shiny, untouched, little kid is now scared, repressed, anxious, forgotten that you ever even had an inner child. And so shadow work is supposed to help you work through that to get to the root of it. I wanted to talk about this because I was really sad to see that there was so much controversy on TikTok about doing this, and I guess I just felt like people really didn't understand that Okay, so I am going to add a another part to this discussion on the shadow work journal. I'm sure you have seen it everywhere. I guess I'm just trying to help you understand that this is not a scary or a dark process. It is literally all about just taking a walk through your own humanity and your own mental health to figure out whether or not there's anything that you need to work on or fix. And a lot of times most people know they have things that they need to work on, because they struggle with relationships and, finances and weight or different things like that. And so they know that there's something going on, but they're not entirely sure. And shadow work is all about going behind the scenes. It kind of reminds me of like in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy walks behind the great and powerful Oz, the machine that's making all this noise and being obnoxious and, being all scary and everything. And they go behind it. There's just this little guy back there talking into a microphone. I think that's a kind of an accurate view of shadow self. But one of the things that I liked in this book was it was saying how to spot your shadow self. How do you know if you have a shadow self, or how do you know when it's acting up or when it's being triggered? So the first one was notice your triggers. Triggers are emotional responses that are often intense and seemingly disproportionate to the situation at hand. I'm on page 22 right now of the book. And so it can be an automatic knee-jerk reaction that you don't even have time to process it. You are immediately spun out. Recognizing patterns. Patterns are repetitive behaviors that may not serve you, but are hard to break free from. So you may be one of those people that tends to make the same mistakes in relationships over and over again, but honestly, your brain doesn't really know any other way to do it, so it just keeps doing it. This is part of that inside stuff that you've got to work on. Understanding projections. Projections are aspects of ourselves that we unconsciously place onto other people. And this one's huge because sometimes if we tend to be very negative people, if we tend to be kind of critical people, we see other people in that same lens and we assume they feel the same way about us. And as a result, any conversation, any dialogue that you have with that person, you assume that they are meaning exactly what you think would be what you would mean, because you assume they think like you do. You assume that they are believing like you believe, and sometimes that's negative and sometimes that's positive. This was interesting. To understand your projections, consider the characteristics in others that you find extremely irritating or conversely over-admire. Then ask yourself if these traits could be part of yourself that you've disowned or idealized. Wow. That was, for me personally, that was huge. That was absolutely huge because I can definitely see where I have attempted to align myself with people that have characteristics that I really admire. And part of it might be because of my fear that I can't actually possess those things on my own. And I'm working through it. And the last thing, actually, the second to last thing was pay attention to your dreams because they're rich sorts of symbolism. There's a lot of controversy, I know, in science as to whether or not dreams actually do mean anything other than just, neurons firing at night. But I do think that there's something to the fact that, a lot of people have dreams and they're about relationships or they're about things that are going on, but there is a lot of symbolism. And so Carl Jung said, pay attention to those. And the last one was explore childhood and past experiences. Reflect on your childhood family dynamics and significant life events. Identify unresolved issues, traumas, or unmet needs that might be contributing to the development of shadows in your life. When you do this, you look at your own life with compassion and curiosity, and it's an attempt to help begin that healing process for you. So this is again on page 22 and 23 of the Shadow Work Journal. I think I could go on for days about this journal. I guess my big thing is I just don't want you to be afraid. I think it's good therapy. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are hurting and that could probably really use it. It's an affordable, functional way to do a little bit of self-therapy. Bye. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go and add a part 4 to this shadow work series that I've been doing with you guys. I really love this book. I've made it clear over the last ones. There's a part 1, 2, and 3 if you want to go back and look. But one of the things that the book talks about is your emotional triggers and how we have got to work to identify what our triggers are. Now, I will say this. Sometimes, and I've done this before too, and I am just as guilty of finding out what my triggers are and then asking everybody around me to kind of tiptoe around them. Like, this is my trigger. You know you're going to trigger me. Why would you do that? When in reality, it's not other people's jobs to tiptoe around your triggers so much as it's our job to figure out what our triggers are, work through them, and then, go from there. Again, I'm not an expert. I am a person that has suffered a lot of trauma and has done a lot of work to try and work on it. And so, here we go. All right. So one of the first things that they talk about when you're working on finding your triggers is to come up with inner child affirmations. And this is affirmations that specifically address the shadow problem. So if you have for example, you have an abandonment problem. Maybe you had an absentee parent. Maybe, you had one that was incarcerated, was a drug user, or just, flat out just left. An affirmation could be, I am loved, I am accepted, I am good just the way that I am, and I deserve to be loved consistently. That might be a good affirmation for your inner child. Another thing it says is to become a butterfly net, meaning catch your triggers and then examine them. Like if you were to catch butterflies in a net, wouldn't you want to look at all the little colors and all of the little patterns on them? I know I would, but I'm a dork. But so what they're saying is catch those, examine them, and see what they're trying to teach you, see what they're trying to tell you. So here's an example of some of the emotional triggers that you could find. This again is in the Shadow Work Journal. This is on page 25, and this is still during part 1. This is still part 1, and there's so much good stuff. So number 1, shame. The book describes this as shame is an intense emotion that arises when you believe that something is fundamentally wrong with you and who you are. It often arises from societal expectation, past traumas, or internalized beliefs. So shame is where you think there is something completely wrong with me. It's not external to me, it's internal. It's not like I did something, God, I'm going to sing Taylor Swift song, I did something bad. It's not like I did something bad and I feel bad about it. It's that I myself am flawed. And that is one of the emotional triggers that we want to look for. To overcome shame requires compassion, self-acceptance, and a recognition of our inherent worthiness as human beings. Back to that affirmation for the child, I included, you are worthy, you are acceptable, and you deserve love consistently. Guilt. Guilt is when we've done something wrong or violated our own moral code. And again, that is more internal. That is, we have done something wrong and we feel bad about it. And fortunately, guilt can actually be a positive thing. I know I did a video a while back on Brene Brown talking about this. Guilt can actually be a positive thing. Guilt is the thing that says, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe this doesn't line up with, your thought systems, your belief patterns, all of those things. But again, if you're working through your shadow work, the whole point is to figure out why you're doing the thing that you're doing, that you shouldn't be doing, but you're doing it anyway. Guilt can be constructive because it reveals your values and helps you learn from your mistakes. The next one is anger. Anger is a response to perceived threats, injustice, or frustration. It's a natural and it's a valid emotion. It can help you discover uncontrolled or needs for change in some boundaries. So anger's there. Sadness is a response to loss, disappointment, or unfulfilled desires. It can be triggered by a variety of experiences such as loss of a loved one, a relationship, and it's a necessary part of our experience as humans. How would we ever know? How would we ever know what it was like to be happy if we were never sad? I know that's a hard thing to, to think of, because we always kind of want everything to be happy. Embarrassment, the emotion that stems from feeling self-conscious, awkward, or humiliated in social situations. If you are feeling embarrassed, that can lead to shame, and that can lead to a desire to hide. And I know I have extreme social anxiety, and I know 100% that's part of it. And so again, that's why I'm doing my shadow work, trying to, work through my stuff. All right. Jealousy is a cover-up emotion. It makes itself as anger or judgment when underneath really is sadness and dissatisfaction with yourself. Woo! If you are jealous of somebody, what you're actually saying is, I feel insecure about what I don't have compared to what you have, and that makes me angry. That makes me sad. That makes me feel dissatisfied. Regret. Regret occurs when you feel sadness over past actions or decisions. Most people have some form of regret. And fear is a response to perceived threats or dangers, which sometimes are good because they can keep you safe. It's a protective mechanism. But if it becomes something that's irrational, it can limit your experiences and growth. Again, this is on page 26 now. But if you are constantly afraid, it can limit what you're able to do. I always love when people are like asking, kind of like, a magical question, like if you could do anything without fear, without limitation, what would you do? Like if you knew you couldn't fail. And a lot of times that fear of failure stops us from doing things. It stops us from growing. So one of the things they were talking about in here was the inner child. And so I wanted to show you another book. I know, I have so many books. There is this book right here. It's The Recovery of Your Inner Child. It's by, oh Lord, I'm not even going to try and butcher this poor woman's name. I know it's Lucia something, or Lucia, it might be Lucia. But she talks about how 1 in every 4 adults has suffered some sort of sexual abuse. And so when we get back to that concept of before the drama, before the trauma, who we were as little kids, before all of that, there was something inside of us that, was supposed to be given to the world. And then we have to now deal with those shadow traumas. This is where we see an illness, divorce, career upheaval, financial disaster. All of these things bring these things to the surface. And then this is where we see like the check engine light goes off basically in your body, and you are sick and you are ill and you don't feel good and your brain hurts. You're having migraines, you're having digestive issues. You're having all kinds of things. Maybe you can't go outside anymore. Maybe you hide behind relationships. Maybe you hide behind other things, like if you're a beautiful person, maybe you hide behind the fact that you're beautiful so you don't actually have to deal with the stuff that's bothering you. If you're rich, maybe you hide behind your money. If you're smart, maybe you hide behind your intelligence. But at some point, if you have not dealt with these shadows that, of pain and trauma, there will come a point that they will come to the surface. There's another book called The Body Keeps Score, and I'm not real sure where it is right now, but the body keeps score, meaning that the body will pay attention and it will eventually force you to work yourself through these things, and you can either do it on your own or your body can help do it for you.